We advise the opinions and views of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
You are what you watch. Hello, my name is Tambuatco and welcome to our program. You know, as I watch TV and I look at international news, it seems the Philippines is not far behind. Let's see, for politics, conflict, or whatever social issues, it seems we're just right side by side with what's going on around the world. I thought the American presidential election toward the Republican Party was something interesting enough. You don't need to go into cable TV. Just stay on local TV and you will see how our politics continue to develop and how conflict becomes the real issues. When I say conflict, I'm not talking about the content of what we're talking about, issues like the former president. We're talking about issues that are in conflict, meaning it's no longer the content, but the legalities that come into play. And what's happening is it's become quite interesting for many. But also for the others, it seems becoming even more confusing. Now, confusion will cause division, and that's exactly where we're headed. So I guess the conflicts that have become or that are just keep opening up day after day is causing more divisiveness with our people. Hindi po nakakatulong sa atin lahat to nangyayari na parang nakakagulo. Kasi marami sa atin, parang ano ba ito? Ano nangyayari? Hindi natin maintindihan. You know, you are so right. I am so confused as well as to which and who to believe because nowadays everybody seems to be right and nothing seems to be moving. We have a special guest and the topic is going to be quite interesting. It's called legal inconsistencies because that's exactly what the issues are. But to introduce our guest, we've got Dr. John Teope who's with us in the show as well. John?
Hello, everybody. You know, our guest for today is somebody that we invited pertaining to legalities and show as a peek, you see him earlier. So the idea right now is that legalities, law, conflicts, doctrines, maxims, and everything. So people would look at lawyers as the one who interpret laws, but right now we have so many lawyers have so many different interpretations. So mga kaibigan, ang ating pong inimbitahan na guest ay talaga pong otoridad sa usapin ng batas. At pagkalaban mo yung batas, hindi mo siya kakampi, mga kaibigan. Alam niyo po, ang ating guest ay graduate ng University of the Philippines College of Law and he is a veteran broadcaster and a veteran legal luminary pertaining to discussions on legal aspects and legal advocacy. And sa mga nakakilala sa kanya, at marami na rin pong natulungan ng taong ito sa usapin ng legal na suporta at sa legal na pagtulong sa mga mahirap na nangangailangan ng mga tulong. Siguro mga kaibigan, I would like to introduce to you our guest, Atty. Melanio, Batas, Mauricio. Great day.
Maraming salamat po, Doc Teope. Thank you very much, Harry. It's a privilege and an honor, of course, to be part of your Talk to Harry.
Attorney, thank you for being here because we're going to put you in the hot seat.
Yeah.
With the same your color red is perfect for this show.
Well,
for this particular show.
Yes. I suppose it is. It is very appropriate for the topic that you have lined up for this afternoon. More especially, I do not intend to feel cold. I forgot to wear my socks.
Buti na lang dyan. Hindi naka-yellow si attorney.
Yeah.
Buti
Okay.
na lang. Oh, let's start. Attorney, I started out the show complaining about issues that seem to become divisive for the country. Ang nangyayari po, lahat nalilito sa mga komplikasyon na umaapaw, kumbaga, no, sa nangyayari. It seems The content, in this case, I refer, for example, with the Supreme Court, and of course the issues, the content being GMA. Regardless of the content of the facts of the case or what is due her or not, it seems there is an ongoing conflict with what we call the legalities or law.
Yes.
Yung nangyayari sa kanya, and tama ba sa batas yan? Depending on which lawyer speaks, alam mo lahat sila tama eh. Pwede ba yun? Ang batas ba iba-iba? Does it mean one for one and another for another? Di ba tama, if I'm not mistaken, the law applies to all.
That's right. That's right.
How is it possible?
Well, I've heard many times that in a country where there are many lawyers, there are as many interpretations of the law. But it would come to a point, really, that when all of these interpretations are coming at the head towards one another, there is going to be a need for a particular arbiter. And in this case, it is going to be the Supreme Court, which should be the arbiter. And when the Supreme Court speaks, that is the law, whether the Supreme Court is correct legally from the point of view of many lawyers or whether it is wrong.
That's exactly my point, Attorney, without putting the Supreme Court in the hot seat. If only I could put them here with a red barong, perfect. But the problem is, nagsalita na Supreme Court eh.
Yeah.
And yet the interpretations continue to flow. They continue to innovate and they continue to create different whatever. So it's confusing. So is the Supreme Court only good for some and not applicable to others?
No, the Supreme Court is good for everyone else. It should be. Because under our Constitution, under our system of laws, the Supreme Court is considered to be the final arbiter. This matter has already been resolved several hundreds years ago, even by the Supreme Court of the United States, in the very famous case of Marbury versus Madison, which we imported and borrowed in a case that is interestingly entitled Angara versus Electoral Commission. In both of those cases, the Supreme Court of the United States and the Supreme Court of the Philippines both said that when there is great conflict confronting the society, and there is a need to determine the rights and privileges of particular departments of government, there is only one agency that is given the right to say which is right and what is wrong, and this is the Supreme Court.
Why is it we have a super being by the name of the Department of Justice Secretary, De Lima, who seems to be all-powerful that she can say, hindi ko susundan ng Supreme Court. Hindi, dapat itong tama. I mean, this is our perception.
Yes.
I think it is the perception of everyone in the streets as well.
The actuations of the current Justice Secretary, Laila De Lima, insofar as the temporary restraining order of the Supreme Court is concerned, is basically viewed by many lawyers, and I think many lawyers agree, except the lawyers around the President, of course. Many lawyers agree that she has overstepped the bounds of her power as Justice Secretary. She is first and foremost a lawyer and an officer of the court, and therefore, she must be following what the Supreme Court is saying.
Okay, Attorney, I would like to
Yes.
ask you right now is that
Yes.
what is now the difference of the role of the DOJ from that of the Supreme Court? So the DOJ, what's the function?
Oh, that's very interesting. But there is no comparison, actually.
Yeah.
The DOJ is a mere adjunct, is a mere agency of the one of the three great branches of government, the executive,
yeah.
branch. The Supreme Court is the second branch of this three
Judiciary.
co-equal branches.
But the DOJ usually issues opinions, and these
Yeah.
opinions are being followed by some executive departments.
Yes,
and
until
even-
it is set aside by the Supreme Court.
Oh.
Yes, so you can see that the Supreme Court is actually a far more superior government agency, in fact, a far more superior branch of government than the Department of Justice, and therefore, the Department of Justice must be following what the Supreme Court is saying.
Attorney, before it gets more confusing, because every time I listen to lawyers on TV,
Yes.
nalilito ako eh,
Okay.
in all honesty. Let's bring it down to brass tacks. Labag ba sa batas ang ginawa ni De Lima based on what we saw on TV? You heard her.
Yeah.
Hindi ako susunod sa Supreme Court. Tama, hindi? That's what I thought I heard.
Yeah.
Do you agree? Is that your perception too? When it was happening, this is 1 week ago,
That's right.
when GMA was about to go, she wanted to leave, and she came out to TV. This is just my perception.
That's
I could
right.
be wrong.
That's
The
right.
interpretation again of other legal luminaries, maybe say, no, hindi tama yan, Harry. Pero itong percepting ko, masang tao, ang taong bayan, yun ang narinig.
Yeah.
Di ba, lumabas pa siya sa dyaryo, lumabas siya sa lahat. So, di ba, labag siya doon. Tama yun o mali?
She defy.
She defied it. She defied the Supreme Court.
Doc John at mga kababayan. Ano yung problema ni Batas Mauricio sa isyong ito? Well, sa Supreme Court mismo, may dalawang sitwasyon. Ang unang sitwasyon, sinasabi ng Court Suprema, epektibo na yung temporary restraining order, dapat nating sundin lahat to.
Correct.
So kahit sa sino pa, kahit pa si Presidente ni Noynoy, kahit pa si Secretary de Lima, dapat sinusunod na ang Court Suprema. Eh, problema mo biglang nagbago. Sabi hindi pa pala epektibo dahil merong hindi natupad na kondisyon. There was a condition, the second condition, that they must constitute a legal representative to receive summons and other court processes. Wala daw yun.
Yeah, you're correct in saying that because that seems to have come after a day after. That resolution came a day after.
That's right.
Whether it be an excuse or an amendment or a study back into that situation. The point is, when she came out and she said, labag siya sa Supreme Court, tutol siya sa Supreme Court, was that correct or was that a wrong action?
It was a wrong action, definitely.
Then
A wrong action.
why do we even, why does anybody, why do the legal luminaries, the legal minds, the Supreme Court as well, and those that circle the president, why do they allow it? I mean, right there and then I thought, oh my gosh, when I heard it, may mas matapang pala sa Supreme Court sa Pilipinas. No, in my mind, bakit hindi sinuspinde ng Supreme Court to? Right there and then.
Well, the Supreme Court may have been hurt. The image of the Supreme Court may have been hurt, but certainly the Supreme Court is moving. That's the reason why may utos kay De Lima for her to explain what she did. She was being given due process, and after the explanation comes in, then I think the Supreme Court will take appropriate action against her impropriety in refusing to obey the Supreme Court.
Because she went further to
Yes.
say, one, she did not receive it, the document,
Yes.
and number two, she insisted that motion for reconsideration, in
Yes.
spite of the Supreme Court ruling, no, you have to hear our argument. So right there and then, you just put down the Court Supreme. Correct me if I'm wrong,
That's
di ba?
correct.
So right there, the action is incorrect. You don't correct another wrong with a wrong,
That's correct.
nor a correct with a
That's
wrong.
correct.
You are penalized when you do a wrong.
That's
Simple
right.
as that. Di ba?
It's
Correct me if I'm
simple as
wrong.
that. Tama yan.
Ganun lang yan.
Tama yan.
So attorney, let's look at the inconsistencies right now.
Yes.
That was on the airport, GMA.
Yes.
GMA hindi nakaalis. Pero ba't si Ramona Revilla nakaalis?
Medyo matindi naman yung klase na tanong. Alam mo bakit? Hindi kasi GMA si Ramona Revilla.
Yeah.
Di ba? Yun yung magiging sagot mo.
So ang punto ko dito
Yes.
is that in terms of legal technicalities and inconsistencies, the subject matter plays a part. Kumbaga, malalim ba yung subject para for us to come up with a legal opinion?
Parang sinasabi mo, may dalawang standard.
May double standard.
May double standard. Isa para
John,
kay
of
GMA,
course there is.
Isa para sa ibang ordinaryong tao. Parang ganun.
parang ganun.
But attorney,
Oo.
there is. It's called double standards. And in this country, it exists.
I refuse to agree on the ground of self-incrimination.
But-
Mahirap yata.
No, but, sige, explain that part, please.
Yeah.
Continue, sorry.
Medyo matindi yung tanong mong yun. Tunay nga na dapat iisa lamang ang pamantayan sa pagpapatupad
Kasi sabi,
ng mga batas.
sabi
Ha?
ni De Lima, wala naman kasing whole departure order kay kay Ramona Bautista.
Wala nga, pero nakapag-issue siya dapat ng
Whole departure.
Hindi, ng
Watch list.
West List Order,
Oo.
WLO.
Oo.
Sapagkat sinasabi ni De Lima under Department Order number 41, basta't may kaso na sa piskalya, pwede na sila maglabas.
Si Jamie wala pang kaso.
Well, merong kaso sa DOJ COMELEC panel.
Oo.
Yun yung mga sitwasyon dyan. Pero ang tunay na problema dyan, hindi nila pinaalis si GMA, pinaalis nila yung isa, pero halos pareho ang sitwasyon. Dahil parehong may kaso. Ang tanong, bakit si GMA nilabasan ng waitlist order, samantalang si Ramona ay hindi? Yun ang tanong doon.
When we were saying, we were joking around the double standards of the Supreme Court or the legal system, does it not exist? Because number one, the COMELEC, we all know, takes years and decades almost to react or to judge, to create or make judgments on electoral protests. And yet, in this specific case, eksakto, perfect to the, imbanta ng presidente, na mapasok sa GMA ng Disyembre, biglang lumabas overnight. And of course, we've got the fastest judge in the world, Judge Mupas, who does it in 2 hours. We usually explain before the show, there are legal bases for
That's
that.
right.
That's okay, if there is a legal basis.
Okay.
But what about the others who are pending online just because we are not a star witness or a star case? What about our cases, assuming that are pending in his case, in his court?
Yeah.
Unless he is cleared of all the cases, how is it he can jump? Why? Because someone pressures him? Hindi maatatama yun, di ba? May separation yan between the judiciary and the executive.
Tama yun.
So, is the executive now the overall power supreme? Na even the judiciary now, sunod na lang, keto na lang sila sa presidente.
Technically, hindi dapat gano'n yun, Hari at
But doesn't it look
John.
like that? Correct me if I'm wrong. Does it look like that?
Well, it certainly looks like that. But
I rest my case.
it's not supposed to be like that. Ang problema kasi dito, tunay nga na yung record ng husgadong yon ay medyo may problema sapagkat merong mga pagkabalam sa ibang kaso na sa katunayan nakaanyaya na ng pagkilos ng Korte Suprema. Okay? So, makikita mong talaga namang merong konting problema doon sa ipinakitang kabilisan. Pero makikita mo na maaring mapagbigyan na natin ng tamang dahilan, yung hukuman na yon, dahil ito ay isang importanteng kaso, apektado ang isang dating Pangulo, at ang interes ng buong taong bayan ay nakasalalay sa kahihinatnan. Kaya minadali.
Attorney, si Ordinaryong Juan de la Cruz, importante rin yung kaso niya kay Judge Mupas.
Totoo yan.
May mga murder yung hinawakan siguro, stop
Totoo
case,
yan.
mga ano. Bakit hindi mapabilis?
Totoo yan. Pero katulad ng binabanggit natin ngayon, si Judge Mupas ay kumilos sa kasong ito at hindi natin siya mapupulaan at mabibigyan ng pagbatikos sa naging mabilis niyang pagkilos. Bakit? Sapagkat under the law, he is entitled to immediately resolve that. There were two things that he could have done. One is conduct his own personal examination, whether there was probable cause in the case that was filed by the DOJ COMELEC panel, or two, simply rely on the certification of the DOJ COMELEC panel that there is probable cause. Apparently, he relied on the second mode. He studied it. He saw the signature of the COMELEC DOJ panel certifying that there is probable cause. So he could have easily agreed.
So it's legal.
Legal.
What you're saying is legal.
He did right. Legally.
Even with the conflict between De Lima and the Supreme Court,
Yes.
there are legal issues
Yes.
that make it correct.
That's right.
Pero Attorney,
How about priorities?
Priorities.
Kawawa naman kami naman. Kami mga taong bayan. I mean, what happens to us? What, these big people first?
ito, Hari, no? The DOJ COMELEC panel,
Matindi yan, ha?
Attorney, the DOJ COMELEC panel is still being questioned.
Yes.
The legality of their
Yes.
authority to
Sa
conduct.
Korte Suprema.
So, bakit nag-act kagad si Attorney Mupas, si Judge Mupas?
Alam mo, maraming ano yan. Merong kaso, ang tawag dyan is Eternal Gardens Memorial Park versus Court of Appeals. Nagsasabi, pagka ang isang usapin, dinala na sa Court Suprema, ikaw na mamabang hukuman, tumigil ka muna.
Out ka
tumigil
muna.
ka muna. Huwag kang kikilos, baka yung dinidesisyonan ng Court Suprema,
Bangga.
maging moot and academic.
Hindi pa
Sayang.
hindi pa inaction ng
May ganung kaso.
Hindi pa inaction ng Korte Suprema yung
tama yun, hindi
yung
pa hanggang
COMELEC
ngayon.
DOJ panel.
Hanggang ngayon.
Ah.
Pero meron din kasi namang alituntunin. Ang Korte Suprema din na nagsabi, pag wala kaming TRO o wala kaming utos na tumigil muna kayo dyan, pwede niyong ituloy. So, ito yung sitwasyon natin ngayon. Dalawang magkaparehong alituntunin, parehong nanggagaling sa Korte Suprema, yun yung inconsistency na binabanggit natin.
What if attorney
Yan,
ganito?
matindi.
The Supreme Court would come up with the ruling na yung DOJ COMELEC panel is illegal. Ano ngayon ang mangyayari sa epekto nito
Bali
sa
wala lahat. Bali wala lahat yung DOJ COMELEC panel, yung pagmamadali, yung pagsasampa ng kaso, pagpapalabas ng warrant of arrest, bali wala lahat. Yun.
Attorney, sino susundan namin, taong bayan? Ang Presidente o Supreme Court?
Depende sa kung ano pinag-uusapan. Kung pinag-uusapan natin yung utos ng Korte Suprema,
Kung bangga nga sila, may conflict sila, sabihin na isa hindi, which is beginning to happen.
yes, it is happening in fact.
Yes.
There is a Supreme Court decision, allow her to leave. Sabi ng executive branch, don't
Hindi
allow
pwede,
her to leave. Sino susundin ng taong bayan? Sa ilalim ng saligang batas, dapat ang hukuman ang susundin ng taong bayan. Bakit? Sapagkat ang hukuman ang naglabas ng kautusan.
Pero attorney,
Yan ang
di ba,
dapat.
the Constitution states that there are equal branches, magkakapareho.
Yes.
The question right now is, can the executive bully the judiciary? Pwede ba mangyari?
Bully. Medyo malakas yatang term yan. Medyo malakas yatang term yan. Sabihin na natin, pwede bang pagpilitan ng executive branch ng Pangulo ang kanyang opinion, gayong meron ng naunang alituntunin ng Korte Suprema? Yan ang magiging tanong dyan. Ang sagot niya, hindi pwede. Dapat sinusunod ng Pangulo at ng kanyang mga alipores sa gabinete ang utos ng Korte Suprema sapagkat yun ang itinatakda ng saligang batas. If we do not follow what the Constitution prescribes as a rule of law, then papasok dito yung people power maging laban sa Korte Suprema. Sa people power provision ng 1987 Constitution, Section 16, Article 13 of the 1987 Constitution, pwede ka mag-people power sa political issues, sa economic issues, at sa iba pang mga issue may kinalaman sa legislatura. Pero tinanggal ng saligang batas yung karapatan ng taong makialam sa mga isyong may kinalaman sa hudikatura. So hindi pwedeng i-people power o hindi pwedeng pakialaman ng taong bayan ang ikinikilos ng hukuman. Dito sa nangyayari ngayon, we are encouraging people power even against the Supreme Court and the judiciary.
But attorney, people power, you can equate to the word mob rule.
That's exactly
It's the same
point.
thing.
It's exactly
driven
the
by
point.
media, driven by oligarchs,
Yes.
driven by people in power who have specific interests. So you create mob rule, you get 1/10 of 1% of the population, and you say
Yes.
it's people power. So can we say if this conflict which is now existing,
Yes.
nananalo, well, it seems nananalo, talo Supreme Court, no? It's obvious.
Yes.
To the perception of the people, talo Supreme Court. If we throw out the Supreme Court, what do we have? Anarchy, correct?
That's right.
Dictatorship.
That's right.
So it's short of that.
Dictatorship of the most powerful sector. Dictatorship of the most powerful individual. Bakit? Sapagkat wala nang tututol sa kanya. Wala nang magbibigay ng pagtatama o pagwawasto sa kanyang ginagawa. Yun ang magiging sitwasyon natin pag hindi natin pinigilan ang ating pagsalungat at paglapastangan sa Korte Suprema.
But it seems the executive branch also feel that the judiciary is biased in its disposition or its ruling, which is why they're charging on against it.
Being biased is actually subjective. It depends on which point of view you take, Harry. I mean, the government may say that the Supreme Court is biased against the government or biased in favor of a particular individual like Gloria. But then there are many, you will be surprised, including the likes of Senator Joker Arroyo, who's been telling us that, the Supreme Court may be biased, but then that's still the law, and therefore we are still constrained to follow the Supreme Court at all costs because this is an institution that preserves the democratic ideals of
Pero attorney, what's the use of the law? If it is biased, the law should be objective.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
That's what-
It will
yes.
all depend on the perception you take. It will all depend on the point of view you take. Depende kasi sa pananaw mo eh. Yung isa sinasabing bias, o di kaya kumikiling, pumapabor. Yung isa naman sinasabing hindi eh. Ito'y talagang tungkulin niya. Eh di may problema tayo sa ganyang klase ng sitwasyon. Sino susundin mo? Diba? Yun ang masakit.
Before we take a break, attorney, one last question. So, are we in trouble?
I think we are in trouble.
That took you a while.
Precisely because many government agencies, many government officials, and many people are now of the perception and the opinion that they can refuse to obey the Supreme Court. At yun ang problema natin.
Attorney, we're going to have to take a short break. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, the heat is up and we're trying to turn it up even more. But remember what I said when we started the show, conflict creates divisiveness. And division is not very good for a country that does not have what you call a national identity. That's exactly us, the Filipino that's made out of different color, races, and now even religion. So nangyayari sa atin, kanya-kanyang lakad. When it is said that the Supreme Court no longer reigns as an equal part of government, as an equal ruler, nangyayari, we've got problems. So on with our problems on the second segment. Stay with us, and let's see if we can kick this just a little bit higher.
Hello, we're back. We're now in the second part of our program, Talk to Harry. Kanina napag-usapan natin yung sa batas, legal inconsistencies. nalilito yung mga tao sa dami ng batas na naipasa. Ang lahat ba ito ay naipapatupad? Congress per se is what? Passing so many laws. And among those laws, do people know this law? Constitution. Nag-aaral tayo ng Constitution. Pero sa Constitution ba ay nasa puso yan ng bawat Pilipino? Nakakatakot nga dito sa dami ng batas na ito sa nangyayari sa ating bayan, marami ngayong paikot-ikot at panggugulo na maaaring gawin ng ilan sa mga legal luminaries and even sa mga abogado para paikutin ang batas. You know, sometimes they say different lawyers have so many interpretations. We have 1 million lawyers, 1 million interpretations. That is the problem. You know, legal inconsistencies and inconsistencies process that maraming kaguluhan, maraming pagkatugma-tugma ng pagkakalito ng pag-iisip ukol sa usapin ng batas. Pero ang ating bisita ay si Batas at kakampi natin, si Batas. So, Atty. Mauricio, ano po yung sa usapin ng, let's go to the second part ng ating programa, no? Conflicts, inconsistencies, the Constitution. Now, I'd like to ask this question. This question is usually palaging tinatanong sa mga ukol dito sa sa peace and order, yung pera na binigay ng Pangulo sa MILF tsaka sa ABB. Nag-commit ba ng treason ng Pangulo? Sabi ng iba kasi nag-commit ng treason. Pero
siguro tignan natin sa kabuuan yung pangyayari. Lumilitaw, ayon sa mga lumilitaw sa pahayagan at sa iba pang media, na itong mga perang ibinigay ay mga obligasyon ng mga naunang administrasyon. Hindi ito obligasyon ng kasalukuyang pamahalaan.
Pero bakit hindi in-implement ng nakarang administrasyon? Kasi nakita nung nakarang administrasyon na maaaring may mali dito sa kanilang unang na-order o na kanilang
May nakita silang mali, hindi nila pinasok.
Oh.
Diba? Maaaring nagkaroon lamang ng kung anong kadahilanan. Pero ang aking punto riyan, maaaring sabihin may problema doon sa issue, pero hindi ito personal na magiging commitment ng Pangulo sa kasalukuyan, ng Pangulong Benigno Aquino III. At dahil dyan, kung nagkaroon man ng pagtupad ng kanyang pamahalaan sa kasalukuyan sa pagbibigay ng pera, hindi mo po pwedeng ihataw ito sa Pangulong Aquino sa kasalukuyan. Sapagkat hindi siya ang Pangulong nag-aproba nito.
Pero sabi nga, they don't negotiate with the terrorists, and these are terrorist groups.
Well, kailangan siguro nating bigyan ng pansin kung ano yung naging layunin ng pagbibigay ng pondo. Yung sinasabi doon sa yung pondo sa Mindanao.
Pondo sa Mindanao.
Oo, ang sinasabi dito ay parang pondo upang isulong ang pagkakaroon ng kaunlaran sa iba't ibang mga barangay sa lugar doon.
I like to look at the inconsistencies. Ang dami naghihirap na Pilipino, pero bakit doon sa mga kalaban ng Estado binibigyan ng pondo?
Hindi naman siguro yung kalaban ng Estado mismo binigyan ng pondo, kundi yung mga komunidad kung saan itong mga sinasabi mong kalaban ng Estado ay siyang namamayani doon sa mga lugar na yon. Precisely, ang aking nakita riyan, the government is trying to provide economic activities through these funds that are being released to those groups so that mailayo sila mismo doon sa kaguluhan, mailayo sila mismo doon sa impluwensya ng mga nagaharing mga magugulong mga tao.
Paano naman yung mga tao na naghihirap dito sa squatters areas sa Payatas? Kailangan din namin ng pondo, kailangan din namin ng livelihood Is it consistent on the Constitution?
I am not trying to be a spokesman of this government. I'm not trying to defend them. But my perception is that there are other activities likewise that the government is undertaking to address these problems of people, poor people from other groups, from other areas, like sa Payatas na yan, o kung ano-ano mga Tondo na yan, o kung ano-ano pa bang ibang lugar. And I certainly would like to believe that kahit nagbigay tayo ng pondo sa Mindanao, nagbigay ng pondo sa ABB o sa CPP o sa NDF, yung ibang mga sektor ng lipunang Pilipino ay na naghihirap din ay hindi naman pinababayaan sapagkat merong ibang mga aktibidades at pagkilos na ginagawa ang gobyerno.
Hindi sapat.
Sa tingin ko hindi rin sapat yung sa 5 milyon doon sa Mindanao. I'm sorry. But, yun lang yung aking nakikita doon. In other words, let us try to give this government a chance to push its economic agenda even in places like this. Because I personally believe that when you provide jobs, when you push economic development in areas precisely like Mindanao, then people there who are prone to fight government will more or less start living according to the better economic standards that they will receive as a consequence of the financial assistance that will be given them. And this I have been trying to advocate for a long time. Let's pour out our economic programs in Mindanao, try to provide decent sources of work for our people in Mindanao so that maalis natin sila sa impluensya ng mga nagre-rebelde ron.
Okay, Attorney. Is the Constitution defective?
Constitution defective. Well, I am biased in relation to that. Alam mo bakit?
Yeah.
Because I believe that this Constitution now, the 1987 Constitution, has very important defects. One defect is the economic provision, more particularly on the
Ownership.
investors. Yes, ownership of
Ownership
lands,
of land.
ownership of media.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Schools.
This is too restrictive.
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it.
Saan pumapabor sa mga oligarko?
Not only that, but ang problema po kasi, pag hindi mo hinayaan yung dayuhang mamumuho ng pumasok,
Tama,
wala namang pondo ang maraming mga Pilipino para magamit mo para ma-develop. So
Correct.
nananatiling mababa ang sitwasyon sa
Magagalit sa iyo mga makabayan.
Alin?
Mga makabayan, sumisigaw no kibaka.
Alam mo, problema na nila yun. Basta ako ang puso ko yung nasa bayan. Papasukin natin ang mga mamumuho ng dayuhan at pabayaan nating bigyan ng hanap buhay ang ating mga
Hindi, ang
kababayan.
Pilipinas,
Yan ang importante
ang
yan.
Pilipinas daw para sa Pilipino, hindi pwede maghari yung mga dayuhan.
Pilipina para sa Pilipino, wala naman silang naibibigay na trabaho, nanggugulo pa nga sila. Ano naman gagawin natin? Di po ba?
Habang dumandami.
Tama naman dami. Yun ang problema natin dito. So, pabayaan natin pumasok. At yan ang isang depekto ng saligang batas. Meron pa akong isa, kahari,
Sige. Yeah, go ahead.
before you inject another topic. I believe that there are many provisions of this Constitution which are anti-biblical, against the Word of God. Ang bago to, ano?
Maganda yan. Maganda yan. Sige.
Ano to? Ano to? Yung people power provision. Pardon me, Mr. President. Pardon me, yung Yellow Revolution people. Bakit? Sabi ng Biblia, we must follow our leaders. Dapat tayong magpapasakop sa mga namamahala sapagkat walang namamahalang hindi ang Diyos ang nagtatag. Yan po sinasabi. And yet, sa ating saligang batas, Section 16, Article 13, pinababayaan natin ang sambayan ng lumaban sa kanilang gobyerno. Hindi ba napakalaking contradiction? Di ba napakalaking paglaban sa Biblia, sa sinasabi ng Biblia? Kaya ang tingin ko, may problema ang ating bansa. Kaya nandito ang mga sumpa ng Diyos dahil dito sa
Pero ang
klase.
simbahan mismo minsan namumuno sa revolusyon.
Alin?
Simbahan.
Simbahan? Kaya nga pati sila may sumpa eh. Makikita mo. Yeah.
What is the value, the importance of perception when it comes to law?
Perception, I think, insofar as law is concerned, is everything. If the people perceive that law is being followed, law is being respected, then everybody will follow the law. But if the perception is that law is not being followed, being ignored and being set aside, more especially the people of privilege, the people who have money, who have power, then we will have people who will no longer respect the law, and that's where your mob rule will really come in.
I like to follow up the
Yes.
I like to follow up the perception. Usually, the legal decisions at these days are sometimes based on perceptions. The media itself is creating a perception on the case per se. Halimbawa, si Hubert Webb, guilty yan eh. Sinabi, ito lumabas sa media. Kaya nung lumabas sa Supreme Court na na-acquit siya based on technicalities, maraming kumukontra. Because the perception that was created or built by the people is that guilty si Hubert Webb. So, ibig sabihin, perception per se sometimes influences justice, influence the people in robes sa korte.
I can agree with you. I can agree with you that these kinds of media
Good.
releases, I can agree that it can influence. But you know, there are many good justices and there are many good judges that somehow, kahit na medyo matindi yung sitwasyon kanilang kinakaharap, they try to be true to their duties and responsibilities as judges. Maraming mga hukom, maraming mga justices ang medyo may problema sa kanilang pagpapalabas ng mga desisyon. Pero let me tell you and let me assure you na marami ring mga hukom, marami ring mga justices ang nananatiling tapat at totoo sa kanilang tungkulin na magbigay ng parehas na katarungan sa ating mga kababayan.
That being the case, do we have a system that is still working? Or is the judiciary being put to the side, the executive? Because they're forever in conflict now. Do we have anarchy?
Well, let me put it this way, Harry. I believe that all of this constitutes a process of development. There is conflict, yes. There is an ongoing battle between the executive and the judicial
You're
branch
saying
of
it's
government.
healthy, attorney. Since this is all very healthy then, this exercise of conflict.
It is causing pain at the moment. But let me assure you that all of this would lead to a final development of the proper concepts. Then we may be able to produce concepts later that would become established legal precedents, the legal principles by which the future generation of Filipinos can find.
But attorney, justice delayed is justice denied. The long process per se is injustice to us.
Well, yeah, I know that, but even the systems we have now were not developed in one day, were not developed overnight. What I'm saying is that, everybody is heated up at the moment. Everybody is angry at the moment. Everybody wants to have his way at the moment. But I am sure that all of this will gel together at some future time and come up with the necessary legal principles by which future Filipinos will have to live.
So you're confident there is resolution to the current conflict that's ongoing, be it for GMA or whatever?
For the Filipino people, Harry. For the Filipino people.
But I thought you should only do that in the academe, when you have all these issues. No, I get confused, attorney. I told you right before we started the show, before we got onto the set. It seems the conflicts, pag nasa Bogasya kayo, you're all studying law.
Yeah.
You're all in school. You're being taught by the rule of God, the rule of the Constitution.
That's right.
And yet when you come out of the academe and you graduate and you get your license to operate as a professional, the playing field is totally different. It's personality-based. It's based on perception, the power of public opinion, media being stronger than what it is today, what it's supposed to be.
Yes.
And you have to take all of this into consideration. And then comes the issue, of course, delay, which is really,
That's right.
that's the character of the courts.
That's right.
It's called 20 years.
That's right.
It calls 30 years.
That's right.
That's why, pag, you get to court, useless na. You're gonna be there for the next 50 years. Talo ka na. Basta pumasok ka sa court.
That's right.
Every lawyer will tell you, ayusin nyo muna, mag-arbitrate muna kayong dalawa, mag-mediate kayo.
Yes.
Kasi pag pumasok kayo dito, nako, 50 years yan. Di ba? Correct?
Ganon katagal.
Oh, then,
That's right.
the law doesn't work for us. That's what I'm trying to say. And yet you're taught when you're in school, when you come out, the law is supposed to work for the people.
That's right.
Why is it different? It hasn't changed for the last 60 years. Since my birth, I mean, since, in my time, as a professional, the last 40 years, wala.
Well, that's one way of looking at it, Harry. And from my perception as a lawyer, and once upon a time a student of law, indeed, we have these difficulties you're talking about. But I would say that in the life of our country, in the life of our nation, all of these things that are developing right now are steps by which we should be able to perfect the kind of system that we have.
But who's working on it to improve it, rather than it just metastasizing or deteriorating?
This is a...
So you're saying it's not deteriorating, it's actually improving because of conflict.
That's right. Something is evolving out of it.
Something good is
Yes,
evolving.
something good is evolving out of this present inconsistency,
but attorney-
present problems that we're
Attorney, it took us how many years to resolve the crime of Hubert Webb? 15, 18 years?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Hacienda Luisita has been going on for how long?
That's right.
This GMA issue, 8, 10 years yan. And by that time,
That's right.
the current president is long gone.
That's right.
In this country, it's funny, we ask presidents to serve the country and then we sue them and put them in jail.
Yeah.
Diba? We have this tendency. In the Philippines, you want to be a president, be ready to go to jail after your term. Diba? Kaya ganun dito eh.
I am sure that all of these are working towards finding a way by which a better system will be arrived at. It's spontaneous.
but attorney-
Nobody is actually masterminding it. Nobody is probably consciously setting up all of these things. But let me assure you that all of this would evolve into something that will benefit the Filipino people at some future.
Attorney, right now, is that
Where we will be able to establish the rules.
you're mentioning about God, the fear of God.
Yeah.
How would reconcile the practice of law and the fear of God? Because some lawyers per se prosecutes people
Yeah.
to be jailed,
Yeah.
and if there's a death penalty, to be killed. And some lawyers also coach their clients to lie in court.
No comment.
And there's the fear of God.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess
So
people are made.
how would you now reconcile it?
Well,
There is no reconciliation. I think there are just people who are evil and there are people who are not.
Yeah.
People who've sold out to money.
That's right.
And there are people who still have fear
But even that
fear
kind
of
of a
God.
system, Harry and Doc and ladies and gentlemen, let me assure you that somehow, somewhere down the line, there's going to be a resolution of all this. There's going to be an accounting for lawyers who are teaching their clients to lie in court.
You're saying
People-
Judgment Day?
Well, probably Judgment Day or through some other means by which people can be made to account for whatever they did, whether here or somewhere else.
You're a man of God. That's why you speak like that. And I agree with you. It's refreshing to hear somebody with all passion and heart to speak for God and the rule of God and with the rule of law. I agree with you totally, although I do have my misgivings. And I do have, well, it's a bit disappointing at the rate things are going. Because I believe that in this world, there has to be, before you get, you have to pay for your crimes, so to speak.
That's
Before
right.
redemption, there is restitution.
That's right.
You have to pay back. There is no
That's
such thing as getting away and starting all over
That's right.
again. Diba?
That's
Now,
right.
without accountability, it's anarchy.
That's
correct? Which is, my problem now is the way the politics is going. It doesn't bode well. It's creating division. It's creating a lot of, the lawyers now will become emboldened. The people in government, be it for the executive
Yes.
and the legislative, will become emboldened.
Yes.
And you know, most of them are lawyers. Huh?
Yeah.
Most of our leaders are legal luminaries or legal officers of the court.
Yes, sir.
So it doesn't bode well that conflicts like this happen, and then the Supreme Court losing its how do you say, its integrity, so to speak, perception-wise. I have to qualify the perception that they've lost their integrity. Well, I think it's very much a very strong public opinion, so to speak. You disagree with that, though?
Well, let me assure you that, yes, there is such kind of perception at the moment that the Supreme Court has lost its integrity. But I don't know, I may be portraying myself as a positive individual in relation to this kind of a situation right now. But my thinking is that all of this may be a necessary step towards that final setting up of everything going for the people at the proper time.
Very quickly, Attorney, where do you think this GMA issue and conflict is going to end? How do you think this is going to play out?
Well,
Right now,
right.
of course, hospital arrest, di ba? Andiyan dyan na yan. How do you think it'll play out?
my perception
Magagaling
is that from Gloria's camp, they're going to freeze the ball, dribble the ball, until the principal oppressor
Is gone.
quote unquote, is gone.
So you only have 4.5 years to
Yeah.
play.
Yes,
That's
yes,
it.
Yes, yes. On the other hand, as far as the Aquino government is concerned, they're going to
Go for it.
go for it and try to secure a conviction before the end of his term.
Does it become a better Philippines if Pinoy wins and GMA is incarcerated? Just very quickly, just yes or no?
Yes, more or less, because it will somehow give the fear to a lot of people who are prone to committing corruption in government.
So restitution. In
Right.
other words, accountability.
Right.
Attorney, we only have 5 minutes left, and I know you're a very outspoken person, and you speak very well. So I'd like to give you your message to the people, couple of minutes.
All right.
No questions.
No questions.
Ikaw na lang. Sige, your message.
First of all, I would like to thank Talk to Harry, of
Thank
course,
you.
Harry and John and GNN for allowing me to be here. It's an honor and a privilege to be here in this program. But let me stress one point. All of these are happening because there's someone out there that wants this to happen. There's only one way by which we can make things right for this country, and this is the way of God. We must be able to choose a leader who fears God and who loves God, and who will make this fear and love of God in himself be manifested in his governance. Then and only then will this country become truly great again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John, your message.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, inconsistencies really exist in our life in so many aspects. May it be legal, political, moral inconsistencies, and so many things. Now, Attorney Batas mentioned about the fear of God. It's just basic, ladies and gentlemen. There's just the 10 Commandments. If people would just follow the 10 Commandments, I think there's no need for us to enact more laws. Thou shalt not kill, there would be no murder. Thou shalt not steal, there would be no robbery. And so the 10 Commandments per se is just basic. But the
I'm glad he stopped there, Go ahead, sorry, John.
But the problem there is that the idea right now is that people per se usually violates law and so creates so many laws and drops so many laws. Now, philosophically is that people would look at law as so complex. Law is not complex. People makes the law so complex. It's just easy to understand the law. Pag sinabing huwag kang tatawid, huwag kang tatawid. Pero tumawid ka. Pero sabi ng abogado, kaya siya tumawid kasi may dahilan eh. May pinatay na isa. Self-defense daw, mga kaibigan. Kontra na naman. So palagi pong may palusot. Ito nakakalungkot, mga kaibigan. The law is the law. If we would follow the law, siguro wala na po sanang gulo sa ating bayan. Inconsistencies per se is that maraming pinag-uusapan, maraming kontra dito, kontra doon, contradictions. The Constitution per se have so many provisions and have so many interpretations. The problem is that we have so many intelligent people in this country, but the problem is that they are not applying their intelligence for the progress of this country. So ladies and gentlemen, sana po sa konting pagsasama natin ngayong araw na ito, sa gabing ito, kahit paano we learn something from our episode. Great day and great evening.
Maraming salamat, John. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, I agree with Attorney Mauricio. And I think it's great that he brings up God. Alam mo, we are all Catholics naman. And many of us seem to lose sight and direction of the basic rules. The law was based, or our law, our Constitution is based on the laws of God, which becomes law of man. That's correct. The problem is we all seem to go wayward. And I agree with John, Dr. John as well, that ang nangyayari, we don't seem to have enough discipline as a people. Now, what happens is because of the different powers, influences, money that we seem to have and hold within ourselves, ang nangyayari, we tend to abuse everybody around us and the law. Now, let's hope that the people who have the mandate, the leaders, know what they're doing, because whatever you're doing up there and whatever conflict you guys are getting into, don't forget, it all affects us. Either way, it becomes more of a mess. Maraming salamat po. I hope you've enjoyed our program. Thank you very much for Attorney Mauricio, Dr. John. Maraming salamat po. We'll be back next week, same time, same channel. Thank you very much. You are what you watch.